Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. Today, the show is about the spiritual mission of the United States of America, and you're so welcome not only to listen, but to participate. You can send us an email if you want and prefer, like many people, they're shy. They like better sending their emails to us at kardecradio@gmail.com or kardec@kardecradio.com. Or you can go directly to our website, kardecradio.com, and there is a contact form. Just send it to us, and we're here. We're going to get your information and address it. Not only that, but you can also live talk to us at blogtalkradio.com/KardecRadio. There is a chat room for everybody who is willing to talk to us, share their comments, and be here with us at this very, very show. Of course, if you're listening to this on demand, like many, many people around the world, we wish you many blessings. And still, if you have a question or suggestion, send us by email. Or if you're listening to this right now, live, why don't you call us? Why not? Don't be shy. 858-769-4705. Again, this is a toll-free number, 858-769-4705, and we'll be happy to listen from you, especially because in this month of October, we're dedicating to Kardec, to many topics he discussed and addressed, and we are sending to all those who call us or contact us for these very shows a beautiful commemorative Kardec Radio stamp. Can you believe it? Kardec Radio has an official Kardec Radio stamp, which is valid in the United States if you are shipping anything from the United States to the world. So we'll be happy to send it to you. All you have to do is to contact us, calling at 858-769-4705. If this is past the show, you can email us, and we'll be happy to send one of these to you. Well, there are many good news happening around the world. We have several events coming up starting next week, and you can be in one of these several locations. In Massachusetts, November 2nd and 3rd, the renowned and scholar Haroldo Dutra Dias is going to be in Boston, Massachusetts for amazing events. All you have to do is to log in at akssma.org and get to know more about events and how you can register for them. Also, Haroldo Dutra is going to be here. We're organizing 3 events in Pennsylvania on November 4th, and then in Baltimore, Maryland on November 6th at the University of Maryland, and then the next day in Virginia, Chantilly, Virginia. Haroldo Dutra Dias is going to be with us, sharing the good news that there's so much to know more about life, the spiritual laws of life, the ins and outs of it, and especially about the healing Christ. Well, to get to know more about this information, just go to the Spiritist Society of Baltimore's website, www.ssbaltimore.org, or you can also go to the website of the Spiritist Society of Virginia, since it is a joint event. It's ssvirginia.org. And then on November 10th in Chicago, there will be another commemorative event with Haroldo Dutra Dias and other speakers. You can go to the website of the United States Spiritist Council, spiritist.us, to get to know more about it. Well, you know there is a sister radio, Bezerra Online Web Radio at spiritist.com, and all you have to do is to log in the website and get to know and hear the great programs. They are not only retransmitting Kardec Radio's programs, but they are also they have shows in Portuguese and also in Spanish. So you have many choices, and they display exactly the times in which they are broadcasting different programs in different languages. It's all about Spiritism there for you. For us here today, it is going to be about the spiritual mission of the United States of America, and it's a much important show because no matter who you are and where you are on this planet, we are on the same boat, and it is on us to be fraternal, to be in true solidarity. If by any chance or means you don't sympathize with the United States, you're going to get to know more about the reasons why you should make efforts to love it, to appreciate it as much as any other nation in this world. And you get to know more about the spiritual behind the scenes, not only on the formation of the United States of America, but on its role in the United States. And to chat with us in this conversation, we are going to open the line very soon to our dear Carrie Stroh-Snyder, who is a member of the Spiritist Society of Virginia, and she's going to be here with us chatting about these many interesting and so important topics. At the end of the show, we're going to invite you for a very important moment. What is it? It's a special prayer because the United States is at a very crucial moment, election time for presidential elections. So important, it can change not only the life of the United States of America, but it can change the life of everyone around the world. So we're going to have, a special moment to pray so we can contribute. Of course, we're not going to say whom we personally are going to vote for because, the Spiritist conduct tells us, and this is in the book by Spirit Dr. André Lewis, when he said, the name of the book is Conduta Espírita, and it talks about the Spiritist conduct before politics. We shall never use the Spiritist Tribune or any Spiritist way and means to share what is our political party. Why? Because Spiritism does not get involved. Unlike other philosophies and religions, we do not get involved collectively in regards to politics. We personally do, but not collectively as a Spiritist. So in that regard, we would share with you that it's just on us to join forces and pray, and you'll be very welcome to do so because Allan Kardec, in the Spirit book, in the Law of Progress, he mentions to us the importance of the whole of the nations, their roles, because, friends, we reincarnate today in one nation, and the next day we reincarnate in another nation. Of course, we mean next day, meaning next lifetime, and we should not be ethnocentric. Ethnocentricity is something that is really backwards, and in the Gospel according to Spiritism, at its very introduction, Kardec mentions quite clearly, the Spiritist teachings are spread all over the world, labeled sometimes with different names, and they are coming through different people. Thank God. And it doesn't belong to any specific nationality. And why wouldn't the United States of America also have an important role in the spiritual progress of the earth? You want to know more, right? I feel you do, and we want to know more too. So hold on there, because right now we're going to share with you the message by the Spirit Meimei through Chico Xavier that is entitled Joy, because the show today is about joy, the joy of fulfilling God's will on earth as it is already in heavens. Followed by this message, you'll listen to a most beautiful, just recently put together song by James Marotta from Brazil. He is putting together these beautiful songs for us here at Kardec Radio, and this one is most special. It's inspired also in Emmanuel, in a message by Emmanuel through Chico Xavier. Listen to these amazing excerpts, and we'll be right back with you.
Joy. Joy is the song of the hours when God caresses your passage through the world. Everywhere flowers bloom as smiles of nature, and the wind combs the field's hair with resting music. The water from the fountain is liquefied care in earth's heart, and the small golden grain of sand is a message of joy from the ground. Do not allow, therefore, that your difficulty transforms itself into numbing sadness for others. Even if everything appears to conspire against the happiness that you await, lift your eyes to the smiling face of life that envelops you, and bolster joy wherever you go. Bless and serve always, even among tears. The rose, although subjugated by thorns, still offers its perfume, and sunrise awaits generously for the night to finish in order to renew itself. Daily, in a party of love and light.
Sometimes your heart won't stop hurting, 'cause someone you love has gone away. The brightest morning is cold and dark, and it looks like a trap in the past. The old days sure hold some treasures that we should never forget. But we can't look back while we're moving on. Those old tears must be all left behind. When you close your eyes tonight, don't think of the way it might have been. Turn your mind to the best you can do now. Sow the seeds of tomorrow today. When you close your eyes tonight, don't think of the way things might have been. Turn your mind to the best you can do now. Sow the seeds of tomorrow today. Sure, we all will need forgiveness for those bad things we've said and done. But we know life will bring us a new chance. Maybe we won't get it now, but somewhere else somehow. When you close your eyes tonight, don't think of the way things might have been. Turn your mind to the best you can do now. Sow the seeds of tomorrow today. When you close your eyes tonight, don't think of the way things might have been. Turn your mind to the best you can do now. Sow the seeds of tomorrow today.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Come and join us in 3 amazing events this November. The renowned magistrate and spiritist scholar Dr. Haroldo Dutra Diaz will be the keynote speaker in 3 events. Sunday, November 4th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the Days Hotel and Conference Center in Westchester, Pennsylvania. This event will be dedicated to the spiritist view on cancer and healing. Dr. Marco Magalhães and Dr. Vanessa Anceloni will also share the stage with Dr. Dutra Diaz. This event is free admission, and you will also enjoy a beautiful and inspirational spiritist music and art festival. Don't miss it. Tuesday, November 5th, Haroldo Dutra Diaz will speak at the University of Maryland in Baltimore on the healing parables. And on Wednesday, November 6th, he will speak on the Apostle Paul for Spiritist Practitioners at the Spiritist Society of Virginia Center. For more information, go to www.ssvirginia.org today.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here live talking about the spiritual mission of the United States of America. You may be asking, is that possible? Is there a spiritual mission for the United States of America? I thought only other countries. What about the United States? Is there a mission? So to discuss this and much more, we have here with us Carol Stroh-Snyder, who is a member of the Spiritist Society of Virginia. Hi, Carol. Thank you for joining us at Kardec Radio today.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Vanessa.
So, Carol, is it too weird for people when they think about the United States with the spiritual role? What do you think?
No, a nation, it's like a family. It has a role. It has a role in humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And as we see in the book, A Caminho da Luz, On the Way, Path of Light, we see that us individuals, families, communities, and nations have a role. And it's up to me, it's very nice to see that we have a role for us to guide us. So if we live here in America and we know it has a role, we should do our best to make sure that we help to fulfill this role.
Mm-hmm. You said it all. And it's all about the information, as Carrie is mentioning, on the book On the Way to the Light. It's right in Portuguese, as she said, A Caminho da Luz, by the Spirit Emmanuel through Chico Xavier. You can get this book online at edisayofamerica.com and also at amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com. And this book is really amazing. You can get it in ebook format or as a printout. And to kickstart the Emmanuel own words, his own words on how did this plan come about, let us get to know of the behind the scenes. We have several excerpts here from the book, and these that you're going to listen now is from chapter 20, The Renaissance of the World. Let us listen to this before we start discussing a little more.
The Renaissance of the World, Regenerative Movements. At the dawn of the 15th century, when the medieval era was about to end, large assemblies of spirits met in the vicinities of the planet to direct regenerative movements, which, in light of Christ's determinations, would lead the world into a new era. This entire regenerative effort took place under his merciful and compassionate gaze as he poured out his light on all hearts. Devoted messengers reincarnated on the orb to carry out loving and redemptive missions. On the Iberian Peninsula, under the guidance of Henry of Sargas, who was responsible for the great and beneficial accomplishments, schools were founded for navigators to sail the seas in search of unknown lands. Numerous precursors to the Reformation appeared everywhere, fighting against abuses of a religious nature. Former masters of Athens reincarnated in Italy to spread the most beautiful jewels of genius and sentiment in the areas of painting and sculpture. England and France prepared for the great democratic mission that Christ would entrust to them. Commerce spread from the restricted waters of the Mediterranean to the great waves of the Atlantic in search of the forgotten roads to the east. Jesus guided this rebirth of all human activities, which would define the positions of the various European countries and invested each one with a particular responsibility in the structure of the planet's collective evolution. To facilitate the extraordinary effort of this immense endeavor of renewal, the Divine Master's auxiliaries introduced into Europe ancient inventions and useful implements from the East, such as the compass for their maritime endeavors and paper for the divulgation of thought.
Yes, dear listener, we are talking about Emmanuel's take on how these plans of a new world came about. And here, Carol, Emmanuel was just talking about the chapter before about the end of the medieval era when, the barbaric people really took over, and the fall of the Roman Empire happened in 1453. And then at the dawn of this new century, the 15th century, there was a spiritual plan. It's not only a material plan, but a spiritual plan to get the new lens to the new plan of Jesus. So how interesting can that be when people think like worldwide at a time, Carol, in which we didn't have internet or we didn't have TV, radio, etc. People were all on the same page with minimum communication. It was a widespread mentality. Oh, let us find out what's happening in other lands. So now we're getting to know that the spirits are telling us that these impulses that seem so instinctive, they are actually out of superior inspiration, right? Right, Carol?
Yes, it is very humble, I think, for us to know that a community of pure spirits came to Earth to help us to direct the guidelines of the planet and how each nation would help the planet evolve. So it's very humbling to us to know that the Supreme Lord had this vision and brought the spirits together to guide the different nations on their roles.
Exactly, and this is how the mission of the Americas came along, because to date, if you go into Europe and elsewhere, there's always this willingness to come to the Americas and people talking about the Americas. And in the past, it was even stronger than today when people were dreaming about the new world. So now with Emmanuel, we're getting to know that this feeling of, wow, the new world, let us find a new life for ourselves, doesn't come only from, out of nowhere. It comes from a very specific force, as Kara was reminding us, a community of pure spirits guided by Jesus who are putting together a divine plan. And as Emmanuel just said to us, to facilitate the extraordinary effort of this immense endeavor of renewal, the Divine Master's auxiliaries introduced into Europe ancient inventions and useful implements from the East, such as the compass for their maritime endeavors and paper for the divulgation of thought. And as Carol said, it is really humbling to us because it tells us that we don't have great ideas by ourselves alone. It's a teamwork effort. Right, Carol?
Yes, definitely. As we know, Jesus was a very high spirit that came to earth, but it wasn't just him. It was a community of spirits. So it reminds us that we also have to work as a team, as a nation together, that there's no I in team.
And the question here, Carol, for all of us now who are listening to this show is, where am I into this? Because if this is the order of events, that great accomplishments really begin in the spiritual realm, then become materialized, then how should we then take? You mentioned briefly at the beginning, but can we elaborate more? How should we then relate ourselves to this concept of a spiritual mission for the Americas?
I think first we need to understand what is the mission, right? As we're going to see later, the mission for America is to be the brain. So for us to understand what does that mean, what is the brain of the earth supposed to mean, we have to study its history. How did this come about? So for us to study the history of the nation. And then for us to see, how can I play a role in that today? What am I doing? What are my actions today to fill that? Am I going against God's will and not understanding the mission of the nation? Or am I just listening and doing whatever I want, whenever I want, without fulfilling my role and the role of this nation? So I think for us, first is understanding what is the goal, what is the mission of the nation we live in, and second, what is the history of that nation? How did that come about? Because that will give us clues about how we should move forward as a nation and an individual.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what Emmanuel was bringing to us. We're going to listen to this now, Carol. It's an excerpt of the chapter 20. It's entitled The Mission of the Americas. Let us listen to this to complement the thoughts and talk more about it.
Mission of the Americas. Christ then set his abundant hopes on the Americas. The 16th century dawned with the discovery of the New World, but Europeans at the time generally did not grasp the importance of such an event. The fabulous riches of India dazzled the adventuresome spirit of the time, and the crowned heads of the old world did not understand the moral significance of the new. Nonetheless, Jesus' workers were unmoved by the criticism and applause of the world and carried out their great duties within the environment of those new lands. Under a higher determination, they organized the evolutionary lines of the nationalities that would flourish there in the future. On that field of new and regenerative struggles, all the spirits of goodwill could work for the advent of peace and fraternity for humanity's future, and for that reason, having in mind the forthcoming centuries, they defined the role of each region on the new continent, placing the brain of the new civilization where today's United States is located in North America, and its heart in the abundant and welcoming lands of Brazil and South America. The former was to hold the material powers, the latter the first fruits of the spiritual powers destined for the planetary civilization of the future.
Yes, so it is talking to us about a plan. And some people are like, wow, they were planning like centuries beforehand for the upcoming new civilization. But that's how it goes, right? If you have a good plan, you need to, like, for example, we talk nowadays about the Olympic Games, and nations prepare themselves like 4, 8, 12 years beforehand to host an Olympic Games. Imagine preparing the planet to host and to care for a whole new civilization. And this is precisely what had happened. So, Carol, we have here received, as we talk about the United States having the role of the brain of the new civilization, and the heart being in the land of Brazil, and let us remember that this was brought to us in 1938. This information we are just talking about came about before the United States became what it is today. Isn't that amazing, Carol, that the spirits were revealing, it's like a revelation. Emmanuel was revealing something to us that people could not foresee back then, and it becomes a little clearer today for us, right?
That is very true, because if we think about when the spirits came, the discovery of America by Christopher Columbus, and then the book and how America is today, no one would have guessed the inventions that would have taken place in the U.S. and the many sharing of knowledge in Brazil. So that is very true. This book was a true visionary in bringing this knowledge to us.
Exactly. And there is a listener who sent an email to us knowing that the show was going to come about, asking the question of whether or not it has any correlation to the topic, the fact that the French people who put together the Statue of Liberty and gave it as a gift to the United States, at the same time giving the redeeming Christ, the statue, to Brazil, if there is any correlation with what Emmanuel is saying here, the brain of the civilization being the United States of America and the heart in Brazil. Isn't that fascinating? That may probably have some correlation, don't you think?
Yeah, I definitely think so. We see, one of the greatest landmarks in the U.S. is the Statue of Christ. And we also see in America one of the great statues is the Statue of Liberty. So there is a purpose for those statues to be the landmarks of those countries and what they stand for.
Exactly. And talking about the brain, Carol, it's fascinating. I am a neuroscientist, and some people think that the brain is something cold, etc. But the brain is the most beautiful organ we have in the body, because it coordinates the movements. It coordinates every function, including emotional function. So the brain, when we talk about the brain, it doesn't mean it's a cold-hearted brain, if we may say it this way. It's the one that coordinates. And what a beautiful mission to coordinate the material powers of the earth. After all, as we have studied, God has created two elements in the universe, the material principle and the spiritual principle. And the material principle is also a creature of God, and we must have also, in a planet like ours, a nation who is specifically in charge of coordinating these material powers. Makes sense, right? And when we talk about the Statue of Liberty, I mean, it's a free brain. It's a brain that is promoting freedom. After all, the law of freedom is a natural divine law. And then the redeeming Christ, it's all about the heart, the spiritual powers. So it seems to us that as there is no chance in this universe that the offering of these statues as gifts purposely to the United States before the end of the 19th century, it was actually very spiritually driven. It's likely, isn't it, Carol?
Yes, definitely.
And Karina Menezes is mentioning to us that this is probably one of the reasons why we have this migratory exchange with people coming from Brazil to the United States and vice versa. It's probably divine sent, the exchange, of course, because the brain and the heart, they need to communicate very well. Otherwise, so many problems happen. So mostly we would say the people who are living in the heart, they really need to take care of it. Does it mean, Carol, that people who are living in other countries should feel less because Emmanuel didn't mention specifically about the other roles in this excerpt? How should they feel?
No, not at all. I think this knowledge is just to help those who are in those countries and us in general understand the mission of those countries. But just because a country or a nation wasn't mentioned, that doesn't mean they have a role, and their role is not as important as any other country. Maybe in the future we'll have books that will explain the role of each and all the nations in the world. Exactly.
So, Carol, as we're talking about the topic of the colonization of this new world, we're talking about how this new civilization is going to be implemented in this new world. We have here an excerpt that Emmanuel talks about the invisible realm and the colonization of the new world, getting to know who are the spirits that were sent to these countries, to the Americas, all the countries in the Americas, to boost the new world for the new civilization on the earth. Let us listen to this.
The invisible realm and the colonization of the New World. After the discovery of the Americas, a great effort of spiritual selection was implemented amid the struggles in Europe in order to create another sense of evolution in the New World. If the colonizers of America were at first exiles or outcasts from European societies, one must remember that these settlers did not come only from the great capitals of the Old World, considered from the exclusive point of view of the material plane. Countless groups of good-willed souls also departed from the invisible realm to incarnate in those new lands as children of those outcasts who were often persecuted by the inequity of the human justice. Joining these more or less advanced exiles were many European spirits who had grown weary of the inglorious struggles of the hegemony and ambition and were looking for redemption in the constructive effort of a new homeland on the solid basis of fraternity and love. Hence, the more elevated sentiments amongst the American peoples regarding the understanding of the continental community. If we recognize the spiritual projection of Europe in the Americas, we must realize that it became a more knowledgeable and experienced Europe, not only concerning the problems of international harmony and human solidarity, but also regarding all the issues that entail the true assets of life.
How interesting is that, Carol, that he talks about, it's a whole definition about the spirits who were sent to the new world to make this new civilization. Not only those who came from the old European countries, but also the spirits who had good-willed souls and departed from the invisible realm to incarnate in those lands as children of those outcasts who were often persecuted by the inequity of human justice. Quite interesting, huh?
Yeah, it's very interesting because usually when we think of the people who first came to the U.S., we only think about those who came from Europe and not the children that were reincarnating and their souls and what they brought to the nation.
And it's interesting, Carol, because the people who are coming and the children who are coming along, the spirits, right, in this new reincarnation, as you said before, we need to get to know of these teachings to really fulfill what is in the plans of God. And St. Augustine, in chapter 14 of the Gospel According to Spiritism, talks about the fact that parents their main mission is to lead their children to God. And certainly this is the golden rule for successful parenting, leading the children to God and then fulfilling God's will. Right?
Yes. Parents are the first educators for the children. And like St. Augustine said, helping them fulfill God's will is the best thing the parents can do for their children. Because as the first educator, they're the first ones to influence their children when they're young and also when they're old. So teaching our children from the time they're very young about God and God's will, it will be much easier for them because instead of telling them, be the best or do this or do that, they might suffer because of that in the future. But if we tell them, listen to God's will, listen to your guardian angel, maybe when they're adult, they won't suffer as much because they're fulfilling their goal instead of seeking some other mission or some other path.
The question here now, Carol, is if this is the plan of the higher spirits, and they say that, and this is a question by another listener who wants to be anonymous, but says, well, if this is the plan, then that the Americas, more knowledgeable and experienced, then fulfill the problems concerning international harmony and human solidarity, why do then the United States, for example, created, why did it create so many wars, whereas it should be more in solidarity and fraternity? Is this probably a deviation of the plan? Is that somewhat related to free will?
I think it has to do with the history of its nation. In the Declaration of Independence, our fathers for this nation said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." So as a nation, we believe in these truths that are self-evident, as our fathers said. So I think as a nation, they have continued to pursue these goals. And maybe sometimes the way they have gone about to sharing these with others and other nations might not have been the best. But I think it has to do with the history and the beliefs of the U.S. and then wanting to share those with all of the other nations in the world.
Mm-hmm. Carol, we're going to go for a short break. When we come back, we want to talk more about this refugee in the Americas by the Spiritist perspective of Emmanuel through Chico Xavier. We'll be right back.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Wait and love always. Much affliction will be cut at the root if you learn how to smile in silence. Many grudges will be forgotten if you forgive the inequity you implore for the peace of the Lord. But the Lord equally awaits your participation in the peace of others. Reflect on the needs of your brother before you criticize his thoughtless deeds. Oftentimes, the aggressiveness with which he hurts you is only his anguish, and the rude word which he uses to return your care is nothing but the wound in his heart poisoning his mouth. Aid 1,000 times before you disapprove only once. The swamp admits ailing currents, for it did not find hands to dry it out. And the desert brings on thirst and suffering, for it did not receive the morning dew. Allow mercy to develop into silent help in your heart, so that pain may fade away. Do not fuel the fire of evil with a dry log of irritation and hate. Wait and love always. In silence, the prune tree multiplies its own fruits, and the sky, overtaken by the nocturnal shadows, reveals the glory of the stars. Think of Christ, our silent friend. Without demands or self-acclaim, he wrote the immortal poems of forgiveness and love, hope and happiness in the heart of the earth. Let's make him our model in our daily struggles, and by tolerating and helping today in this short human existence, we will reap tomorrow the blessings of the silent light, which will show us the ways to eternal life.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here talking about the spiritual mission of the United States of America, and purposely we're dedicating this show because we are on the verge of a most important election, presidential election, that can change the destinies of the Americas in general and the world. And it's not a political statement. We are not going to use the Spiritist Tribune to share our the party we're voting for. It's beyond that. It's about the spiritual take on it. So you participate no matter where you are in the world, because Kardec Radio is in more than 60 countries, and everyone should actually pray. So the divine will is done here on earth through these elections. And no matter who is going to be there, may he, whomever he is, fulfill God's will by knowing that the United States of America, as every other country in the Americas and the world, has a role on the earth. Carol, in this during this break, people were sharing with us through the email that not every American actually is pro-war. So they were reminding us that many are really pro-fraternity and solidarity. So let us talk about the United States being considered the most generous country in the world. Statistics tell that the United States of America has more non-profit organizations than any other country, and that people in the United States of America donate to non-profit organizations and volunteer more than any other country in the world. Isn't that amazing?
Yes, that is amazing. And also, I think we forget that as a nation, the U.S. donates more money in U.S. aid to other countries than any other country in the world. So it is, as a nation, also very generous in donating its tax dollars to others to help those countries in need around the world. And like you said, as a population, we are also very charitable, sharing with others our resources. And companies, I can to say for my company. My company is a big, large company, and as a company, they do many charitable works, and they motivate their employees to do work on behalf of the company and on their own. So I believe that this charitable is a great belief, and it's inherent in the American people, which many countries of the world could learn from, because it does great work for the nation and for the people here.
Exactly. And this matches so much an excerpt from the book On the Way to the Light by Emmanuel, which is actually a phenomenal book that talks about the history of civilization in the light of Spiritism. And when he talks about the refugee in Americas, he says, considering the movement of general and isolated responsibilities, the invisible plane under Jesus' guidance led to the Americas all the sincere and industrious spirits who did not need to reincarnate in Europe, where individuals and collectivities were becoming more and more bound together by the chain of lives of expiatory trials. All the spirits called together to organize future progress flocked to the hemisphere of the New World. Many of them had acquired a sense of fraternity and peace after many struggles on their former continent. Tired of looking for happiness within the narrow confines of exclusivist sentiments, they felt within themselves the generous flowering of edifying reforms as they grasped the true solidarity of the universal community. Thus, from the very first, the political organizations of the Americas became bulwarks of peace and fraternity for their entire orb. This was because, considering the ongoing troubles in Europe, living on the American soil, and in the hidden light of their social climate, was regarded by all spirits as a blessing from God. Quite interesting, right, Carol? Because it tells us that if we want to be aligned, Carol, according to what they are mentioning and revealing to us, and this was a revelation brought in by Emmanuel in 1938 through Chico Xavier, way before, it's like before the Second World War, that everybody knew the United States of America wasn't the country that it became until after the World War, the Second World War, and it was quite visionary from the spirits to reveal it to us so we could prepare. So if we are living in the United States of America, what should then be the mindset if we want to be aligned with this plan?
I think one of the great benefits of living here in the U.S. is the access to education. We can go and we can seek any course, any graduate degree, anything we want, and that is not always the case in other nations, and the access for that for people at all levels. So I think if we're given this opportunity to continue to learn and to grow, we should take advantage of it, because by taking advantage of this education, we can then help this nation go into the next century. For example, right now there's a great push for green energy. So if we are in this field or if we're interested in this, it's a way that we can help this nation and help the world. There's innovations of green energy, wind turbines, and things like that. So we can, by learning and by seeking education, we can help fulfill the goal. And since this access is easily be accessible to all, we should take advantage of it. I think that's one of the main things.
Yes, you're right. And to learn about the fact that nothing of this goodness happens by itself alone. It comes in a teamwork effort of two planes, the spiritual material and the collaboration of several nations. Here we have an excerpt in which the Spirit Emmanuel talks to us about the foundation of the thoughts that will give a boost to the American independence. Let us listen to this to get to know how the spirits play a role in our lives by putting together the characters in the story of the upcoming new civilization. Let us listen to this.
The Encyclopedist. The 18th century began with equally renewing struggles, but higher order spirits of philosophy and science, who reincarnated chiefly in France, would fight against the errors of society and politics, upending the principles of divine right, in whose name all sorts of barbarities were being committed. Amongst this plethora of reformers were the venerable figures of Voltaire, Montesquieu, Rousseau, D'Alembert, Diderot, and Quesnay. Their benevolent teachings reverberated in the future United States and throughout the rest of the world. Amid scintillations of sentiment and genius, they were the industrious instruments of the spirit world for the regeneration of Earth's collectivities. There are some historians who, in a characteristic desire for sensationalism, are not ashamed to state that these studious and wise spirits were paid by Catherine II of Russia and the monarchs of Prussia to undermine the integrity of France. But such statements are slanders that only affect those who make them, because it was the sacrifices made by those generous spirits that lit the divine spark of thought and liberty, the substance of all the social victories that made modern people proud.
This is amazing because it brings us a context for the new Americas, the new civilization. As Emmanuel is saying, Carol, the thoughts of independence, of benevolent teachings, they reverberated in the United States and throughout the rest of the world, but they came with those missionary minds of the Renaissance philosophers, the encyclopedists in Europe. And this is quite fascinating because the true feeling would be to be aligned with that mindset of freedom and human rights and solidarity, right, Carol?
Yes, I think, as we look at the Illuminists, Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, John Locke, they were instruments of Jesus and God to bring us these teachings and to help America with the humility, I think, being the American independence on July 4th, 1776. These philosophers and thinkers of the 18th century had a great influence on America. And because of them and many others, America became independent. So God sends these missionaries to help us in the world. We should align with us and align with them in their thinking and help the nation to fulfill its mission.
Exactly. And Carol, just on a side comment, it's about how interesting it is that the Spiritist teachings that Emmanuel is bringing to us is teaching us to understand this collaboration between two worlds. As André Luiz says, the evolution in two worlds. He's telling us, look, whatever comes about historically on the earth is a byproduct of freedom, of the free will of the people, but also of the free will of the good minds as well, of influencing us to keep ourselves on the right track, no matter how much we are delayed in our progress. There is always this beautiful input from the higher minds and those who reincarnate with the missionary mindset. But not only that, Carol, it's about these missionary minds coming in all the fields, in arts, sciences, philosophies, and religions, because we tend to think that missionary minds usually come only in religious fields, and the Christ messengers, the ones who are sent by Christ, they come in all the fields of human life. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, because I think most of the time when we think of missionaries, we usually think of Moses and Buddha and Jesus, but we also don't think about, for example, the American missionaries. Graham Bell, he invented the telephone in all his good work. Benjamin Franklin, the library system that he set up, and the many other works that he brought us. And these, I would consider personally missionaries. They had a mission, and they helped this nation evolve. So you're exactly correct. It's not just in religions that we see these missionaries come to help a nation and the world.
Yeah, we really appreciate these teachings that Spiritism share with us, because it's teaching us to read life from a different angle, being less sectarian, being less ethnocentric, and being ever more open-minded, seeing God in everything and everyone, and including those who are in the political positions. As Kara just mentioned, the founding fathers and mothers, when you talk about John Adams and his amazing wife, Abigail Adams, I mean, you can recognize in them as much as all the people who were there pro the American independence, the mind of people who were sent to create this new civilization, which is a divine promise to all of us. So this is quite interesting, because it teaches so much that probably we haven't foreseen before the coming of Spiritism. So to wrap up this idea about how the invisible realm helped us fulfill this new level of progress on the earth, let us listen to what Emmanuel has to say in regards to the American independence.
American independence. The ennobling ideas of the encyclopedias and their new social theories were welcomed most openly in the English colonies of North America, which were organized and educated in the spirit of freedom of their homeland's parliamentarianism. Thus, the invisible world used this great opportunity to implement the grand democratic principles proclaimed by the philosophers and thinkers of the 18th century. And when England failed to apply to her colonies the grand principle that she herself had affirmed, no one should pay taxes without having voted for them, the Americans decided to proclaim their political independence. After a few incidents with England, they celebrated their emancipation on July 4th, 1776, and later drew up the Constitution in Philadelphia, which became the model for the democratic codes of the future.
Quite precise historically. And here, Carol, they are talking about the invisible world using the opportunity to implement the grand democratic principles. So, in this case, we would say the coming of the new civilization depended on these efforts. And when we go revisit the foundation of the United States of America, it's really like these great minds, as you were mentioning, the founding fathers, the founding mothers, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, George Washington, and so many others. Thomas Jefferson, man, what a mindset. He was really, really a genius at his time, creating this new nation for the new civilization. And if we go historians say that it was quite amazing, the effort, because not everybody was in agreement with their vision that the United States should be free from England. And then we see here now that Emmanuel is saying there was a divine plan behind it. So apparently, materially speaking, something really difficult to accomplish. But on the spiritual realm, there is that push to fulfill it, though we, the incarnates, need to do our efforts. Right, Carol? Isn't that how we should read it? Carol?
Yes, sorry. If we reflect now on the independence of the U.S., how brave those men were. You have this great nation, England, which they depended upon for many supplies and many things. And this small colonization in the other side of the world said, no, we're going to be independent. It's incredible how brave these men were and how missionary they were. So I think you're exactly right when you say we have to listen and see that there's a plan, a higher plan, and see what is our part in this higher plan to fulfill God's will. And I think as the election is coming up, we individually have a responsibility. We can all pray, no matter where we live, for this nation. But if we live in the U.S., we have the free will to vote if we are citizens. So we have the responsibility to use our free will to make sure that we influence this nation by our free will. That doesn't mean that whatever we want will happen, but we need to fulfill our free will and vote. So that would be my message, to listen to the spirits, the message that have been brought to us, and see how they reflect on this nation.
Yeah, it's a nation of solidarity. As we talked about the United States of America being already considered the most generous country in the world, reaching out to more nations than any other country. And not only that, but volunteering services here are really a model for all the other countries. And if the mission is to be the brain of the new civilization, and again, as a neuroscientist, we say the brain is the most beautiful organ in the body, meaning it's as beautiful as the heart. And actually, did you know you feel through your brain, not through your heart? So a brain that is loving, caring, that is really embracing, all-embracing, and it is, because we tell the United States as a country that is so all-embracing, it's a melting pot. Everybody comes here, and everybody has an opportunity. No wonder people talk about the American dream, and it's beyond just the material part of it. Though Emmanuel said, according to the plans that are so divine, and Jesus is at the head of it as its governor, it is United States is supposed to be in charge of coordinating the material powers on the earth. And this has nothing to do with dictatorship, with smashing other nations here, there, or everywhere. It just talks about the coordination of the material efforts, which is also, as we said before, related to the divine plan, because material principle is a creature of God. Only Spiritism really brings to us this sense of deep awareness. We probably have more questions. We're going to give a short break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up this program with the final message on the spiritual mission of the United States of America.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Let not yourself be deterred.
Slander affected you because you paid attention to it. Calumny harmed you because you gave importance to it. Discord has upset your ideals because you paused to consider it. Hatred has embittered you because of your hurt pride and inflated self-esteem. Dispute hampered your work because you let yourself be entangled in it. Doubt nestled in your mind because you kept yourself in aimless idleness. Accusers live within a low vibrational level. To give them too much attention in order to attract their sympathy is a waste of time. You expected a general approval but did not care to consult with God. If you are striving to do good and others accuse you, if you are generous but people call you a spendthrift, if you are humble and people say you are stupid, if you have self-discipline and people judge you strict, if you meet your duties and others curse you, if you bow in prayer and try to act according to the gospel and people despise you, do not consider their opinions, because that is not what the Almighty Father thinks of you. Do not let other people's opinions deter you. Do not allow yourself to be either afflicted or conflicted by the contradictory opinions of others. Accept only the inspiring suggestions that stimulate your spiritual progress. You will always meet with those who are productive, and those who complain, accuse, criticize, and harass. Such people come and go and are soon forgotten, but the work done by those who dedicate themselves to do good will last forever.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here wrapping up the discussion on the spiritual mission of the United States of America. And as we have discussed before, we are here with Carol Stroh-Snyder from the Spirit Society of Virginia, helping us unfold the understanding on what it is. So we are here, Carol, and people are asking us, we're receiving an email, they want to listen again to the excerpt that talks about the American independence from the spiritual perspective of Emmanuel on the Way to the Light, the book through the mediumship of Chico Xavier. Let us listen to this before we have our foreign comments.
American independence. The ennobling ideas of the encyclopedias and their new social theories were welcomed most openly in the English colonies of North America, which were organized and educated in the spirit of freedom of their homeland's parliamentarianism. Thus, the invisible world used this great opportunity to implement the grand democratic principles proclaimed by the philosophers and thinkers of the 18th century. And when England failed to apply to her colonies the grand principle that she herself had affirmed, no one should pay taxes without having voted for them, the Americans decided to proclaim their political independence. After a few incidents with England, they celebrated their emancipation on July 4th, 1776, and later drew up the Constitution in Philadelphia, which became the model for the democratic codes of the future.
So, Carol, this is teaching us that nothing is by chance. And whether or not we like it or not, whether we like it or not, the United States hold a divine mission, the mission of the brain of the new civilization. We need to get to know more and share it with our new generations, no matter where we are in the world. If you don't pray for the brain, the whole body is going to collapse. As you know, if the brain has a stroke, the body is going to be affected. So wherever you are in the world, let us love and appreciate the brain of the civilization to really help it fulfill its mission. It's in all of us to send beautiful messages, beautiful prayers. Right, Carol? How would you tell people who are everywhere and elsewhere in the world to align their feelings and thoughts regarding the United States, since it has such an important spiritual role on the earth?
I think the most important is to pray for this nation, especially in these 2 weeks as we have a major election for this nation. To pray for the candidates, pray for the nation. But the second thing I think that we can do wherever we are in the world is to not talk bad when we see something from America or when America does something bad. Because we all make mistakes as a nation. America also makes mistakes. So instead of us blaming them and talking bad about the nation, we should pray. Because if we talk bad, we're only aligning for spirits that don't want to help the U.S. And like you said, the brain is a central part of the organism, so it's a central part of this planet. So I think those are two things that we can do as a human being of this planet.
Exactly, Carol. So right now, for those who are staying there listening to Kardec Radio, don't go away, because we are going to stream 2 excerpts by Kardec Radio's team, and soon after, we're going to be here with all of you, hoping that you join forces with us as we're going to dedicate a special prayer to these presidential elections, irrespective, again, we say, Spiritists do not use the Spiritist Tribune to say whom you're going to vote for. As in the book by Andrea Luiz, Spiritist Conduct, we shall never, ever, ever use the Spiritist place or tribune to talk about our political choice, because it's a personal choice. Spiritism shall not be pro or for any candidate, but we personally have our choice. So Kardec Radio is not going to say who we're voting for. We're just going to pray that the best comes about in these presidential elections of the United States of America. And to do our part, we're going to pray. So in that regard, stay there with us. In 10 minutes, after these amazing segments by some of the members of Kardec Radio, we will be calling in for a special prayer for the presidential election of the United States of America.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners. Welcome back to the Spiritist Moment. We are continuing to read and study about the law of labor. It is located in part 3 of the Spirit's book. It is one of the natural divine laws. Well, something for us to reflect about. How much do I labor? How much do I work? And do we understand the necessity of work, since it is one of the divine natural laws? And let's remind ourselves, as the Spirits remind us, in the beginning questions explain the law of labor, when the Spirits clarify for us that everything useful is considered to be labor. And not only do they tell us that, but in previous questions and throughout the divine laws, they tell us that not only is laboring or work considered to be useful and considered to be labor and fulfilling the law of labor, but it's also a form of charity. More specifically, the Spirits tell us that charity is not only giving alms, but it is being as useful wherever we may find ourselves when asked. We are as useful as we possibly can be. So in one action, we're fulfilling 2 laws. We not only can be charitable, but we're also fulfilling the law of what? Labor. So labor and charity are two laws we can easily fulfill simply by being useful. Now, when discussing about labor, we cannot help but also discussing about rest. And the spirits discuss this with us because Kardec asked the spirits in question 682, since rest is needed after labor, isn't rest therefore a law? And the spirits answer like this: without a doubt, rest serves to restore the strength of the body and is also needed to give a little more freedom to the intelligence, which must raise itself above matter. So this is interesting, dear friends, because they are telling us, yes, rest is definitely needed if we are working, if we are being laborious and useful. There is a time where our body most definitely needs to restore itself. But what is really interesting is the spirits tell us that we also need that rest period, that time of repose. And then we quote the spirit saying, it also gives us an opportunity to give a little more freedom to the intelligence, which must raise itself above matter. Well, for one, perhaps we could say that we are thinking beings, and thereby we need an opportunity to process a lot of the things that go on. For instance, let's give an example. There are many inventors that have existed throughout many centuries. For instance, we can mention Benjamin Franklin, who had this brilliant idea of coming up with just many of his inventions, the bifocals. And perhaps one day, after a very hard day's work, after working, he was sitting and thinking, how can I make my life easier, others' lives easier, who have problems with seeing things or reading? For sure, during his moments of contemplation and thinking, great inventions will come out of that. So, and this makes sense, because that little freedom that he gave to his intelligence, he's raising himself above matter and also facilitating the progress of hundreds of people. Till this day, this invention is still used, not unlike many other inventions that were created to allow us to raise ourselves above the heaviness of matter, to become more civilized, more evolved. Also, oftentimes when we are stuck doing something over and over again, especially when we are working hard at a specific task, our mind is often stuck there. But in order to liberate itself, we need to give our bodies, our minds, a rest from that very act, so we can allow ourselves to elevate our minds to someplace else, some other areas of our mind that needs to be cultivated. So this we respectfully also say, the spirits are also letting us know that staying attached to matter or one physical, fixated idea is not necessarily a healthy thing for us. We need to find some time after we've worked hard to rest and contemplate more elevated things, to process things. But dear friends, let us not utilize this as an excuse to be lazy, but let us work. Work truly is a blessing. It edifies us, it's beneficial for others and as well as to ourselves, notwithstanding the fact that we are fulfilling one of the laws of labor when we do work and are useful. So dear friends, we always recommend you to go and read question 682 or the entire Spirit's book, especially the Divine Natural Laws, so we can guide ourselves towards our own happiness and the collective happiness of others. Until next time, we wish you much peace and many blessings.
Welcome to our Youth Education in Spiritism with Kardec Radio. I am Bernadette Leal, and I'll be spending a few minutes with you, inspiring to bring a spiritual awareness and spiritual teachings to our youth, parents, and educators. Today is our last segment talking about love. In the last 3 programs, we answered the following questions. How can I teach my child about love? How can I help my child to practice love? Where should my child start practicing love? And today's question is, why is it so hard for some children and even adults to practice the law of love? Chapter 11 of the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec has great teachings about the law of love. it says that the law of love substitutes for individualism the recognition of all beings, reminding us that love is not selfish. The word law leads us to think about rules and regulations. It is used in connection with the word love so that we can reflect upon what the rules of love are, how to act in a loving way, and how we interact with others. In the same chapter, we will also learn that to love is to be loyal, honest, and consensuous in applying to our life the principle of doing to others what we would have them do to us. And he continues explaining that love requires us to become aware of the life around us and to search for the inner meaning behind the pain of our fellow human beings. Wouldn't it be wonderful when it finally comes a time in which the whole world would be governed by love? But the question is, why do we sometimes struggle to act in a loving way? Well, first, we would like to point out that we are spirits who lived many reincarnations, and in each lifetime we have the opportunity to grow in knowledge and in love. According to the law of progress, we are constantly giving some steps toward our improvement, one way or another. We may stagnate for a while, but never regress, till life gives us a little push and forces us to move forward toward our betterment. Love is a great part of our spiritual progress, and that is why we have, in daily basis, opportunities to love others. Many of us have been doing it already, practicing to love family members, friends, pets, co-workers. So, what we need to do now is to go a step further and make the effort to love also the ones outside our immediate circle by stepping outside of our comfort zone. We can begin this process by recognizing what situations are easier for us to love than others. Why do certain people or behavior irritate or hurt us? What is it that stops us from acting in a loving way toward a person? And just then, we go to the next step, which is to have a deep reflection on those reasons, using no excuses for our behavior or blaming ourselves for any negative feeling. In Spiritism, we call it the inner transformation, a process in which we get to truly know ourselves and then begin to work on our spiritual and moral progress. You can also do it with your child, helping him to reflect, for instance, on why a friend or someone in his school or neighborhood irritates him, or why he has a hard time playing with him. It is very common to blame someone or his behavior as a reason why we cannot love that person, acting as if our love depends on what a person may or may not do. We struggle loving a specific person because of the way he talks, looks, smells, or behaves. We create expectations on people and want them to act according to our standards in order for us to love them. When we meet, see, or interact with someone, many of us unconsciously put up our love condition checklist as a lever to check if that person is worthy of being loved or not by us. Now imagine if a loving mother would act that way, only loving a child if he behaved the way she wanted. That does not happen because of her unconditional love. So we need to let go of our conditions to love, or the ifs. I love you if you listen to me. I love you if you understand me. I love you if you agree with me. This is actually a very selfish behavior, and by doing that, we allow our ego to speak up, not having room for compassion in our hearts. We need to practice and teach our children to see others as our brothers and sisters. We forget, as we judge someone's behavior, that there is a good chance that in our past life, or even in this lifetime, we have acted in a similar or even worse way. We need to replace our sense of superiority with humbleness of heart, which is essential to be an instrument of love in the world. Question 886 of the Spirit's book illustrates very well this topic when Kardec asks the spirits, what did Jesus really mean when he used the word love? And they answered, compassion for everyone, tolerance for the imperfections of others, and forgiveness of all offenses. Kardec then explains, love and compassion are complements of the law of justice. To love our neighbor is to do him or her all the good in our power, all that we wish might be done to ourselves. Jesus is our greatest example of love. The kind of love he practiced is called agape, meaning brotherly and unconditional love to all others. Kardec Radio listeners, let's work on our love actions and help our children not to have a list of conditions in order to love. And we would like to finish this segment sharing a beautiful message from Francisco Xavier by the Spirit André Luiz about 10 ways to practice love and love ourselves. 1. Discipline and control our impulses. 2. Work every day, producing the best we can. 3. Follow the good advice we give to others. 4. Accept criticism without anger and disapproval. 5. Forget about other people's flaws without giving excuses to our own. 6. Avoid useless conversation. 7. Take any suffering as a learning process. 8. Silence when offended, doing good in return. 9. Help others without expecting anything back. 10. Repeat all the above lessons as many times as necessary, persevering in our progress with no discouragement, putting ourselves at the service of the divine teacher Jesus, today and always. Thanks for listening to Yes. And if you have any questions that would like us to answer in our segments, please email them to kardec@kardecradio.com.
Dear listener, this is the most beautiful show. It talks about work, love. It talks about the United States of America and its spiritual mission. So now, because people have requested, we're going to broadcast again the beautiful song that James Moroda put together. It's named Move On to the Light. It's so beautiful. It talks about forgetting the past, beginning a new future, and rebuilding without holding grudges and enveloping ourselves in forgiveness. After this song, stay there because we need you to pray with us as Carrie is going to share her final comments about the spiritual mission of the United States, our role, and how we can best prepare ourselves to give our spiritual, emotional, and material support to this most important presidential election that is coming about in the United States of America on November 6th. Let us listen to James Moroder, Move On to the Light.
Sometimes your heart won't stop hurting, 'cause someone you love has gone away. The brightest morning is cold and dark, and it looks like a trapped in the past. The old days sure hold some treasures that we should never forget. But we can't look back while we're moving on. Those old tears must be all left behind. When you close your eyes tonight, don't think of the way things might have been. Turn your mind to the best you can do now. Sow the seeds of tomorrow today. When you close your eyes tonight, don't think of the way things might have been. Turn your mind to the best you can do now. Sow the seeds of tomorrow today. Sure, we all will need forgiveness for those bad things we've said and done. But we know life will bring us a new chance. Maybe won't get it now, but somewhere else somehow. When you close your eyes tonight, don't think of the way things might have been. Turn your mind to the best you can do now. Sow the seeds of tomorrow today. When you close your eyes tonight, don't think of the way things might have been. Turn your mind to the best you can do now. Sow the seeds of tomorrow today.
Dear listener, this is James Moroder. He is this beautiful oxygen molecule that is sending this oxygen to the brain of the world. And this is how we should work in this life. We're talking about the cooperation amongst nations, helping each other to fulfill God's laws and God's will on the earth as it is in heaven. And Carol, as we are just a few days from, like a week from the final moments of the presidential election of the United States, according to the teachings we received today, what would you say is the proper mindset for all those who are listening to us and shall participate, whether voting or not?
For everyone listening, my final message would be to pray for this nation. We should pray for every nation that undergoes an election. And if we have the ability to vote, we should use this ability, no matter their election. We should use our right to vote and our free will. We should vote for the candidate that best aligns with our moral code, our values. If we do that, then our conscience will be clear, because we did our part. So I leave our listeners with the saying we say here in America: may God bless America and this dear planet. Thanks, Vanessa, for letting me share our thoughts today.
Thank you, Kara, so much. So now we invite everyone who is there. Let us pray, because prayer, as Kardec says in the Gospel According to Spiritism, in a beautiful chapter, it says, prayer is the transmission of our thoughts. And let us share these thoughts with our Creator. Let us pray now, hoping that the best comes about in this presidential election of the United States of America. Let us raise our thoughts right now to the Creator and feel the blessings of this beautiful America, full of promises of divine intervention. Dear Mother, Father God, honored by this reincarnation on the earth, we here pray, willing to connect with the higher minds and hearts who are working so hard, day in, day out, to fulfill your will on the earth. May we connect to your divine heart and help the United States of America in its most important spiritual mission as the brain of the new civilization and the one that shall coordinate all the material powers on the earth. May all the other nations feel its fraternal connections with the United States, especially through the many immigrants that live herein. May everyone who is in all the corners of the universe, of the planet Earth, feel the shower of blessings that come from the universe, from all the enlightened minds, the enlightened spirits, who are cheering for the new civilization to come about on the earth. And especially, may we pray for your protection, for your guidance during these elections in the United States of America. May the candidate that will fulfill your will be the one that wins. May everyone who is a leader in the United States of America and has a political position fulfill it with true inspiration from your divine messengers, and especially our dear Governor, Jesus Christ. May the feeling of joy, courage, and hope permeate all the hearts, exercising our right and our duties as citizens of this planet. And so be it. Dear listener, we now close the program today by telling you that we wish you a very good and blessed week. Next week when we come back, we are going to have a most important show. Dr. Marco Magalhães is going to be hosting a program on the Spiritist view on why do children die. And we're going to be here with you while the great Haroldo Dutra Dias is going to be touring in several Spiritist organizations in very important Spiritist events throughout the states of Massachusetts, of Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, Illinois, and then Florida soon after, starting the week of November 17th. We're going to disclose to you the schedule of Haroldo Dutra Dias in Florida next week. For the time being, we wish you always many blessings.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.